winds howled through the ancient village of Fengxi, carrying with them the mournful cries of the past. Ming stood at the edge of the village, staring at the ominous silhouette of the Wailing Tower, a crumbling relic from a forgotten dynasty. Legend spoke of its cursed history, where the spirits of the wronged roamed, seeking vengeance. "Do you hear it?" Jian asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The wailing? It's as if the tower is alive." Ming shivered, the chill of the evening air creeping into his bones. "It's just the wind," he replied, though doubt gnawed at him. The villagers avoided the tower, warning tales of those who entered and never returned. As the sun began to set below the horizon, casting long shadows, a sudden gust swept through the village carrying a faint, sorrowful melody. "We should go," Jian urged, but Ming felt an inexplicable pull toward the tower. "Just a little closer," he murmured, stepping forward. Next morning, the whole village was a whirl of tension. The elder of the village, Chao, gathered all the townsfolk before him. Shaking with terror, he spoke the story of the tower. It was meant to confine an avenging spirit, but it became a lighthouse for the disoriented. A skeptical young man named Liu dismissed him. "Ghosts? Do you believe in such rot? Do not mock what you do not understand," Chao said, his eyes narrowing. "The last time someone entered the tower, they brought back a darkness that still lingers." Mei was a curious girl with a love for adventure and piped up, "I want to see it. What if there's treasure?" "There's treasure or doom," warned Jia, her older sister. "You don't know what you're asking for." As the storm clouds gathered overhead, a sense of foreboding settled over the village. The air crackled with tension, and the villagers exchanged worried glances. "Let's go tonight," Ming suggested, his heart racing. As night fell, the group gathered at the foot of the Wailing Tower, its stone walls looming like a giant sentinel. The wind howled, echoing the cries of the past. "This is madness," Jia whispered, clutching Mei's arm. "Or an adventure," Mei countered, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Ming led the way, pushing open the creaking door. Inside, the air was thick with dust and despair. Shadows danced along the walls, and the faint sound of wailing grew louder. "Do you hear that?" Jian asked, his voice trembling. "It's just the wind," Ming insisted, though he felt a chill run down his spine. As they ventured deeper, the walls seemed to close in around them. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from above, sending dust and debris raining down. "What was that?" Liu shouted, panic rising in his voice. "Let's keep going," Ming urged, though doubt gnawed at him. The group pressed on, their footsteps echoing ominously in the dark. The wailing grew louder, a haunting melody that seemed to seep into their very souls. "This place is cursed," Jian muttered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Cursed or not, we're here now," Ming replied, determination in his voice. They entered a room full of old artifacts, shattered pottery, rusty weapons, and yellowed scrolls. "Look at this," Mei cried, holding up a cracked vase. The wailing grew louder, echoing off the stone walls. "It's like they're warning us," Jia said, her voice trembling. "Or calling us," Ming countered, his curiosity piqued. As they examined the relics, a shadow flickered at the edge of their vision. "Did you see that?" Liu gasped, pointing into the darkness. Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled, and a low growl echoed through the chamber. The ground shook violently, sending the group sprawling to the floor. "Get up!" Ming shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. They scrambled to their feet, hearts racing. "What was that?" Jian shouted, his face twisted with panic. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here," Ming said, frantically scanning for an exit. The wailing had turned into a cacophony of anguished cries, drowning their thoughts. As they stumbled toward the exit, a shadow darted past them, too quick to identify. "Did you see that?" Mei gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "Focus! We can't let it trap us," Jian yelled, forcing her way forward. Just as they reached the door, a figure came out of the darkness, a ghostly apparition with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered, its voice echoing like a distant memory. The group froze, terror gripping their hearts. "Run!" Ming yelled, and they bolted back into the corridor, the wailing now a deafening roar. It is as if walls closed in when they ran out. The night air felt oppressive with despair hanging thick. Bursting through the tower and gasping in a breath, Liu asked on a pale face, "What was that thing?" "I do not know what it was," Jian replied. "But that was real enough." Ming gazed back at the tower, its silhouette ominous against the moonlit sky. "We need to find out what we awakened," he said, determination igniting within him. The group huddled together, fear still coursing through their veins. "Chao must know something," Jia suggested. They hastened back to the village, carrying the burden of the tower's secrets on their shoulders. They approached the elder's house to find him sitting there, his face somber. "You're back," Chao said softly. "I thought you would be." "What have we let loose?" Ming asked urgently. Chao sighed, and the sorrow was there in his eyes. "The Wailing Tower holds the spirits of those wronged by the past. You must understand their pain to find peace." The villagers surrounded Chao as he explained the ancient ritual needed to appease the spirits. "We must honor their memories," he said steadily. "Only then can we hope to silence the wailing." Mei stepped forward, her curiosity piqued. "What do we need to do?" "We must gather offerings, items that belong to the lost," Chao instructed, "and we must return to the tower at dawn." The group exchanged glances, a mix of fear and determination in their eyes. "We'll do it," Ming declared, his resolve unshaken. As night deepened, they scoured the village for relics of the past, old trinkets, photographs, anything that could connect them to the spirits. Each item felt like a weight on their conscience, a reminder of the lives lost. As dawn approached, they stood at the foot of the tower once more, the air thick with anticipation. Holding quivering hands, they placed the gifts in a circle at the base of Wailing Tower. "This is it," Jian said, voice not much more than a whisper. "Hopefully this works," said Jia with a squint of eye across the darkness in the doorway. Chao started chanting, his voice carrying an ancient power. The wind picked up, swirling around them as if the tower itself was responding. "Spirits of the past, we honor you," he called, his words echoing through the air. The wailing grew louder, a chorus of sorrow that sent chills down their spines. "It's working," Mei exclaimed, her heart racing. But as the wailing reached a fever pitch, the ground trembled once more. "What's happening?" Liu shouted, panic rising in his chest. The tower seemed to pulse with energy, and a blinding light erupted from within. "Stay together!" Ming yelled, gripping his friend's hands tightly. The light surrounded them, and they felt themselves standing inside a massive room whose walls contained ancient murals depicting the darkness that befell the tower. "Where are we?" Jian asked in his voice full of awe and terror. "This has to be at the center of the tower," Ming replied as he looked out wide-eyed. On the central pedestal stood something in a shining, thumping orb. "What's that?" whispered Mei, walking forward. "That appears to be living," stuttered Jia, voice rising to an awe-inspired pitch. They continued moving forward until the orb blazed bright to flood the space with its awful illumination. When it was over, the shrieks of misery shifted to an intermingled set of whispered accounts of how someone could turn on each other, about lost loves. "Listen," Chao said, his eyes fixed on the orb. "They're sharing their stories." Ming felt an irresistible pull toward the orb. He wanted to touch it. "We have to understand their pain," he said, reaching out. Just as his fingers touched the surface, A wave of energy ran through him, and visions flooded his mind. Images of the past, of lives lost and injustices suffered. He gasped, stumbling back. It's too much. The others watched in horror as Ming writhed there, caught by the grip of the spirit's anguish. "Ming!" Jian shouted, rushing to his side. As Ming writhed on the floor, the whispers grew louder to drown out what was left to his thoughts. "You have to listen to us." A voice cried aloud, echoing through the chamber. "We are the forgotten." "Fight it, Ming," Jia urged, weeping down. Liu and Jian pinned him down, trying to ground him in reality. "You are stronger than this," Jian shouted desperately. Ming's mind ran 1,000 miles an hour, fighting the flood of emotions and memories. I can't take it," he gasped, feeling the weight of countless souls pressing down on him. A young girl suddenly appeared before him, her eyes brimming with sorrow. "Help us," she begged, her voice cracking. "We were wronged." Ming's heart ached. "I will help you," he promised, determination burning within him. With a burst of strength, he pushed back against the darkness, breaking free from the orb's hold. "We will honor you," he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. As Ming composed himself, the muttering subsided, and the orb faded away. "You have chosen wisely," the voice echoed, a little softer and more serene than before. "But the way to peace will be fraught with challenges." "What do we do?" Jia asked, the voice steady through the fear building in her breast. "To honor us, you must find what happened to kill us," it instructed. "Only then shall we rest." Ming nodded, his face set with determination. "We will find your stories." The orb pulsed softly, and a vision opened before them, a glimpse of the past, the tower's dark history, the betrayal, the sacrifice, and the pain of those who had suffered. "Gather the villagers," Chao said, his voice firm. "They must know the truth." As they prepared to leave the chamber, the air crackled with energy. "Remember, the past is not easily forgotten," the voice warned. Back in the village, the group gathered the townsfolk, their faces a mix of curiosity and fear. "We have seen the truth," Ming began, his voice steady. "The Wailing Tower holds the stories of those wronged by our ancestors." Chao stepped forward, his expression grave. "We must hear their stories and pay respect to their memories." The villagers glanced at each other, the pressure of history on them. "What do we have to do?" Liu whispered. "We should hold a meeting," Jia said. "A night of remembrance." As night began to fall and the sun dipped behind, everyone lit candles just barely so, a circle around the tower. Every person shared stories about their ancestors, being about love, loss, and betrayal. As the night progressed, the wailing diminished slowly, and a sense of unity evolved. "We are not celebrating just the past," Ming said, his heart full of hope. "We are healing." The night of remembrance unfolded with a somber yet hopeful atmosphere. Villagers gathered around the flickering candles, their faces illuminated by the soft glow. "Tonight, we honor those who came before us," Chao declared, his voice resonating with authority. One after the other, the villagers narrated their tales of the effort and sacrifices of their forefathers. Mei narrated how her great-grandmother had struggled with injustice, and Liu spoke of the bravery of his lineage. Each tale wove a tapestry of shared history to bind the different villagers together in their collective pain and resilience. As the night went by, the wailing from the tower became quieter and quieter, as though the spirits listened, their sorrows lessening with each tale told. "We cannot forget," Jian reminded them, his voice level. "These stories are our legacy." Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the gathering, extinguishing some of the candles. Gasps echoed in the night as shadows danced around them. "Is it the spirits?" Jia whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "No," Ming said, his heart racing. "It's a sign. They want us to continue." The villagers continued with a new vigor to their words, speaking with a louder and more energetic tone in chorus remembrance. In the silence at the end, where the final story had just ended, energy felt to fill the air. A silence of an hour-long candle falling finally took over the people's room. As its shimmering began, the soft glimmer came forth from the Wailing Tower. "Look!" exclaimed May as she pointed to the entrance. The shadows coalesced into forms, ethereal figures emerging from the tower, their faces a mix of sorrow and gratitude. "You have honored us," one spirit spoke, its voice echoing like a distant melody. The villagers stood in awe, fear giving way to reverence. "We are the echoes of the past," another spirit said, its eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "You have listened, and for that, we thank you." Ming stepped forward, his heart pounding. "What can we do to help you find peace?" The spirits exchanged glances, their expressions softening. "Continue to remember us," the first spirit replied. "Share our stories with future generations. Only then will we be free." As the spirits began to fade, a sense of calm washed over the gathering. "We will remember," Jia promised, her voice steady. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The village began to change overnight. The tales of the past were now part of their culture and woven into the fabric of their lives. Ming, Jian, Mei, and others began documenting the stories in a book of memories for future generations. He took it upon himself to run workshops in which he educated the villagers about their history. "We cannot allow the past to disappear," he implored, his voice full of fervor. "It makes us who we are." The changing seasons went by, and the Wailing Tower stood still in silence. It was no longer a fearful sight, but rather one of reverence to be used as a sacred place. One evening, the sun set while Ming stood at the foot of the tower. He reflected on their journey. "We did it," he whispered, feeling a sense of pride swelling inside him. However, as he turned to leave, a faint wail echoed in the distance, sending a shiver down his spine. What did it mean? The wailing was back that night, but it sounded softer this time, unmistakable though. "Can't be," Jian whispered with his face now pale. "We respected them." "Perhaps they're not peaceful yet," Mei ventured with furrowed brows. Wanting to hear things out, they returned once again to the tower. "We have to listen," Ming insisted with resolute voice. As they stepped in, the air became electric, and the whispers swirled about them. "You have recalled, but there are still stories to tell," echoed a voice as it resonated throughout the room. "What are you talking about?" Jia asked, her heart pounding within her chest. "Not all of the tales are told," replied the voice, heavy with sorrow. "Some of them are left to lie deep within the earth, waiting for them to uncover." Ming felt a shiver run down his spine. "What must we do?" "Seek the truth," the voice encouraged. "Only then will we find peace." Determined to uncover the buried tales, the group delved into the village's history. They spoke to the elders, scoured old records, and pieced together fragments of forgotten stories. In his evening gathering at home, an aged scroll was chanced upon its edges, frayed and yellow. "This must be it," Chow guessed, unrolling it with his hands. The scroll depicted a tragic event, a betrayal that had led to the building of the Wailing Tower. "It was built to contain the spirit of a woman wronged by her lover," Chow explained, his voice heavy with emotion. "She was accused of witchcraft and cast aside, her cries echoing through the ages." Mei gasped, her eyes wide. "We have to honor her memory." "Exactly," Ming agreed, a plan forming in his mind. "We must hold a ceremony to acknowledge her pain and the injustice she suffered." As they prepared for the ceremony, the villagers rallied around them, eager to participate. "We will not let her story be forgotten," Liu declared, his voice filled with conviction. The night of the ceremony arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation. Under the glows of the moon that was full, villagers had gathered at the base of the Wailing Tower, candles flickering with the night air. Ming stood in front and carried the old scroll. "Tonight, we pay homage to the spirit of the woman who suffered," he started, sounding stern. "He tells me her story." The wind, as if it were listening through the tower walls, swirled around us. "We acknowledge the pain inflicted upon you, and we vow to remember your name," he said in a heart-racing continuation of his promise. The villagers joined in, each saying their own words of remembrance, their voices rising into a chorus of unity. "We are sorry for the wrongs of the past," Jian said, tears glistening in her eyes. "We will ensure your story lives on." As the last words were spoken, a silence settled over the assembly. The air seemed to shimmer, and a soft glow came from the tower. "You have honored me," a voice whispered, echoing through the night. The wailing slowly ceased, and profound silence fell. After these days, the Wailing Tower was silent again. However, it now symbolized remembering instead of frightening. The tale of the wronged woman was also passed on through the villagers' mouths, so her name would not be forgotten even after death. Ming, Jian, Mei, and all of them breathed in a refreshing sense of relief. "We did it," Jian said as his face opened into a happy smile. "She can finally rest." But as they celebrated, a creeping sense of unease slowly began to creep into Ming's heart. "What if there's more stories?" he wondered aloud. "Then we'll seek it out," said Mei, determination shining in her eyes. "We owe it to the victims." Under the scattering daylight of sun set off over a warm glow across the village, Ming felt hope. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, along with the stories of their ancestors being united. Months passed. The village continued to flourish with its history, these tales woven in with each new day's tasks. With changing seasons came another chill, a more familiar feeling in the night. It happened one evening. When they congregated at the base of Wailing Tower, the air wailed softly back to them. "It is back," Jian said softly, and was starting to quiver. Ming's stomach nodded. "We need to listen again," he prompted, stepping forward. As they entered the tower, the air crackled with energy, and the whispers resumed anew. "You have honored us, but there are still stories untold," the voice echoed, vibrating within the chamber. "Then we shall uncover them," Ming vowed, his anger settling into determination within his chest. As they prepared to dive deeper into the secrets of the tower, a sense of purpose filled the air. "Join us on this journey," Ming called to the villagers. "Together, we will ensure that no story is left behind." They knew their work was far from over as the echoes of the past swirled around them. Like, comment, and subscribe to follow our journey as we uncover the hidden truths of our history, Ming urged with a smile breaking through the tension. The Wailing Tower stood tall, a testament to the power of remembrance, and the adventure was just beginning.